Welcome to the Long Range Pursuit Podcast, presented by Gunwerks, where we learn about and share long-range shooting techniques, science, and gear.
Hey everybody, this week's podcast, we're going to be talking about something entirely new for Gunwerks, and it is straight wall cartridges. So today with me, I've got Landon Michaels, product manager for ammo in this case, among other things, and Aaron Davidson, who knower of all things ballistics, and we had some great experiences to share. So,
yeah, thanks, Jim. This is going to be pretty fun. I'm coming in a little at the back end of this project and got hands on the first iteration just this week when we went shooting.
Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I know Landon has done some investigation in this realm for some time, and yeah, Landon. I mean, when did this start for you?
I think there's a number of guys probably listening that are like jumping up and down right now, and I think it's probably a niche thing for us, right? This is a big departure from traditional Gunwerks approach to things. It's long range, big Western big game hunting. That's kind of our bread and butter, right? But we've got enough guys out there that have been asking for these straight wall cartridges, and I think it took a few years of us kind of turning our nose to it a little bit. It's like, why would we want that? But there's a true demand here, and a number of states will kind of get into that have some very specific regulations and seasons where a little bit longer range capable straight wall cartridge all of a sudden opens up a whole lot of opportunities. So these guys that know about this and have been looking for something to just stretch the legs a little bit more for a long time are going to be pretty excited about this new offering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited about it. I have had little exposure to the straight walls, specifically awareness for sure. And lots of folks that I know that are required to hunt with these limitations, if you will, are excited to. I mean, it's all they have. I mean, that's these are the boundaries, and I think the thing that makes Gunwerks special in this realm is we take the science of ballistics and we apply it. We push the boundaries, right? We push the boundaries, and here's a space where we're able to apply technology and ballistics across the board, and dare I say, double, an extended range for these kind of cartridges.
So I'm gonna step in and disagree completely.
Yeah,
it's like we've been shooting this type of bullet at this type of speed in our muzzleloaders for over 15 years, smoking elk at 600 and 700
That was
yards.
my next comment, right?
So it's like I don't think it's out of the wheelhouse. All we're doing is we're just we've settled on a combination that we felt can deliver a real performance advantage.
Yes.
And can achieve our objectives. If we were going to draw a tag in Illinois for whitetail in that season, what would we want to be able to do with it? And so that's what we've set out.
Absolutely.
I think this is right in our wheelhouse.
It absolutely
is. It's just not the Western big game.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. But we're the
it's
only ones that could, I feel like we're positioned to deliver all of the elements to get us there.
And it's almost spooky when you look at the numbers, how similar it is to the muzzleloader offerings that we've been shooting for years, right? And the guys that shoot our muzzleloaders know, right?
Well, so that's the nice thing.
Yeah, sure.
We have confidence with this type of bullet construction at these type of velocities on game up to including elk, bears, deer, antelope at extreme distances with muzzies. And so we can extrapolate that same type of performance right into this space.
Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome. So the most common, we hear about, and 350 Legend and 450 Bushmaster and now 400 Legend are the ones that kind of race to the top of discussions, right? Those are the ones that people are using most, right? And I think that there's a host of others, but the regulatory landscape requires certain things. It has to be straight, has to be a maximum case length of 1.8, sometimes 1.82 for some reason, but in that realm. And so those are the kind of guardrails, if you will. And when we sat down there and looked at these different things, and there are some, I think the 350 Legend has become extremely popular, right? It's soft shooting. It does some of these things.
So why didn't we pick that one, Jim?
It doesn't get, we can't stretch the legs, right? We can't get the distance and the energy that we would like to do to try and get, our goal we set out of the gate for everybody listening. Our goal we set was 500 yards, right? We wanted to say, and conventional thinking with straight walls, you listen to all of the podcasts or gun writers or they proclaim maximum effective range 250 yards. So we said, let's just double that.
Plus half again as much.
That was our goal. I didn't say we'd exceeded it by a great amount or where we landed, but that was where we set our goal. 350 Legend doesn't get there, not effectively, right? There are some limitations with that cartridge.
But if you look at factory 450 Bushmaster performance specs, it doesn't get there either.
No, not at all.
So can't apply the same recipe to the 350?
You could do some things with the 350, but case capacity, it will be your limiting factor. It's based on much smaller case head, 223, designed really specifically on that bolt face and AR-15 platform, even though the Bushmaster is also able to do that. So when we looked at what are some of the options, and then the next question, so case capacity is one. The Bushmaster case is 1.8 inches, roughly, right? It's at the upper bound of length. So with that and the case capacity, and then the typical 450 Bushmaster is shooting a 250 grain bullet, right? That's kind of the status quo. And they're pistol bullets, right? So the other thing you start to look at is the 450 Bushmaster is a 4.52 barrel, right? So the dimensions of the barrel, it's a 452 caliber, which is different than a 450 caliber rifle, which would be a 458. And so the bullets utilized in the 450 Bushmaster are pistol bullets of some flavor. Just kind of a interesting thing that there's such a minuscule difference between a 452 and a 458, which our muzzleloaders are 458. So
if you dig into it a little bit more and you start looking at the science of pushing a bullet to a velocity down a barrel, larger caliber projectiles give you more surface to work on. So at the same PSIs, and the same weights, you can deliver a faster projectile. So when you look at a 350, you've got this smaller diameter. And to bump the weights up and get BCs, you're trying to push these faster, but you have this smaller diameter. And so there's some internal ballistics advantages to choosing the larger diameter bullet. And that plus the fact that larger diameter bullet, you get that weight in a technically a shorter bearing surface package. So now we can utilize a little bit more of that case capacity. So we're playing this balance between ballistic coefficient, bullet weight, and what that case and caliber are able to drive that weight. And I think that's where the Bushmaster makes the right choice for what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And so it's, while we've been making long range muzzleloaders for some time, similar twist rate, but again, it's not a 458, it's a 452. So we're using a different barrel and the bullet selection, then that gets you into that. And that was another major criteria, is how can we find the right bullet that we can utilize in a bolt action platform that is still magazine fed and but get a big increase in bullet Like what would that look like? And we evaluated quite a number of different bullets that gave us a much higher BC option. So from 250 all the way up to 327.
Yeah, the real thing that we want to do there is lean on the significant, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of animals have been taken at long distance with Gunwerks muzzleloaders. So let's lean on that experience and that bullet construction and style to do it. And that you also talk about bullet choice. Back to that internal ballistics thing we talked about. It's like you look at the muzzle velocities we're achieving, and there's a few other parameters you stack up. There's a shape that works better for those lower velocities, and it's a conical bullet.
Yep.
So the tangent ogive and the secant ogive doesn't do you a lot of good right here. So a conical bullet allows you to run a longer bullet and get the benefit of the longer ogive and the increase in ballistic coefficient without adding significant weight into the front end of the bullet and affecting the way the bullet balances. So that conical shape, and then you go look at the way that it sheds velocity. The conical shape works pretty good. Now there's some other shapes that work well, and in fact are even more optimized. When we did the muzzleloader workup, decade and a half ago, and we were kind of new into that space and there wasn't anything available, I went to first principles and said, well, what's the right ogive for this speed? It's like Von Hack is a better one. There's a couple different ogive shapes that work better, but conical is surprisingly a really great fit, and the tooling and the production and the manufacturing of it's pretty straightforward. So I think that's why we see a lot of conical shapes in muzzleloader type applications. So we just took that same learning and applied it to this, and I think it's worked out pretty well.
When you look at this game, right, you're dealing with lower muzzle velocities, right? It's a great wall, so you're going from the round about 3,000 that we're used to with the bottleneck cartridge to around about 2,000 muzzle velocity with these straight walls, right? And so now when you're taking the hit on BC, you're taking the hit on muzzle velocity, and you're trying to extend your range, you're talking about relatively low impact ball velocities downrange. And so you have to be really careful about picking a bullet that will expand at those velocities, but will also hold up at the velocities that you might be seeing at your very common 100, 150 yard shot, which is, let's be frank, where 90% of these shots are taken in the places. But it sure is nice to be able to get that wider range rather than being stuck to that 100 to 200.
Well, what it really does is it sets you up to be able to shoot across the field, and hunt the deer that are coming out across the field rather than hunting where the deer are coming out.
I understand, yeah.
Because then that's all the difference in the world when you're playing that game.
Oh, and to extend your range to 500 yards is the length of, it's quite a distance in most of the locations where these are required.
What do we figure the impact velocity was at our elevation? The impact velocity with the bullet that we've selected at the advertised ballistic coefficient was 1,300 and change. Is that right?
1,300. Yep.
So you look at that impact velocity. If you back up and look at Hornady's match stuff, ELDX, they're talking about impact velocities down as low as 1,600.
Yeah.
If you look at the diameter of the bullet without the tip in it, just pretend the tip is so soft it disappears on impact.
Yeah.
So you look at the diameter of the bullet at that space. The bullets on the ELDX are pretty small. You look at the diameter of this bullet without that tip there's a big, huge surface area. And the same thing that works on the internal ballistics in terms of the surface area and the amount of work that you can do on that bullet, it also works on the terminal side. So you have a bigger surface area that is interfacing with the game animal that you shoot. It's going to allow it to do more work on that surface and begin that expansion better. I've actually shot a bear once really close with a bullet that was very similar in style to this, and it flattened that bullet completely. It was like a big old silver dollar. And we've shot antelope I think Mike shot one that was in that 800 and some yard range, and saw how that performed at the way past the design parameters in the extreme end. So we've been able to bracket the fast to the really, really slow impacts with a very similar bullet construction, and I feel very comfortable at those impact velocities that we're going to get very good expansion across that beam field.
Yeah, and even if it didn't expand at all, say it didn't expand at all, compared to a 6mm projectile, which a lot of deer fall to a 6mm.
We'll go take a nice expanded 30 cal projectile, nice pretty mushroom,
Right.
and then compare it to that 45 cal bullet. They're about the same dang thing.
Yeah.
Right. So, and the other dirty secret here is that bullets that don't expand very often tumble, and they do a lot of damage when that happens.
I think they always tumble.
Yeah, so we jumped right into ballistics. I think we're all excited to talk about ballistics.
Well, we're talking about how we ended up with this bullet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think the bullet is the secret sauce for maximizing the performance out of this case.
Absolutely.
Because it lets us drive everything.
Yeah, for sure.
A couple other things we didn't touch on, you look at it again, you're starting with low muzzle velocities, you're extending your range. A couple of things that you really have to think about, and why just your standard off the shelf box of 450 Bushmaster isn't going to cut it. You've got to keep your velocity spreads at extremely well controlled spreads, right? Because a normal spread is the effects are even more exaggerated, right, with these ranges.
Yeah, a 500 yards could be equated to what we're used to seeing with our big game cartridges at 1,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if your spread sensitivity is maybe 40 feet per second at the extreme outset, you could apply the same thing. At 500 yards with this cartridge. In fact, with the way this thing drifts in wind, I think it's pretty sensitive.
Yeah, and that's the big takeaway for anyone listening is to understand the ballistics and the wind drift.
Yeah.
And to really, because that's where it's at, because the ballistics and the math, will get the drop right there.
Well, let's just finish up on this bullet.
Yeah.
So we were running some numbers earlier, and if we use advertised BCs and velocities for this bullet that we've selected and a factory offering that's available, and look at the velocities that we're achieving, which are a little bit slower because we're a heavier bullet, versus the same factory ammo, we're seeing half of the wind deflection at 500 yards.
Yeah.
So where the factory stuff's drifting 14 minutes, right? So do the math on that real quick. How much is it? So 14 minutes, ours is only drifting 7.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. So that's probably pretty significant if you're hunting anywhere except where the wind doesn't blow. Like if that's a 5 mile an hour wind drift. Right. So then you go look at the velocity, or let's look at energy. You look at the energy that's retained, and we have 2x the energy at 500 yards. And so that goes back to what is available to do the work of expanding that bullet and making sure that we're making a nice big wound cavity so that we kill quickly.
Over 1,200 pounds of energy
Yes.
at 500 yards.
Yeah.
Well, and we saw that display pretty handily when we went out and shot the other night.
Yeah.
Second shot on that target at 550 broke the mountain, flew it down, and flung it down range 20 yards. It was pretty good.
I was actually really impressed with how hard it was hitting at 900.
Yeah.
Clank.
Yeah, that was something else.
Yeah. So for folks that live in a straight wall regulated area, you know who you are, right? You know the regs that are driving that. It's Michigan, it's Iowa, it's Illinois, it's Maryland, it's West Virginia, it's parts of Pennsylvania. I mean, there's a big list, and it seems to be growing, right? It doesn't seem to be shrinking. And so for those,
what's going to happen? This is going to do the same thing that we did to all the muzzleloader places. We made cartridges and combinations that were so effective they had to change the rules. So you watch what happens with what we're doing. The other rifle manufacturers will follow or also supply, and people will put guns together and follow. And so all of a sudden, everybody will be pushing into this high performance space, which defeats a lot of the purpose for the regulation. And then what we'll see is they'll react with an additional limitation or regulation. Very likely they'll try to do some type of an open sight or one power, which is what the muzzleloader guys have done to try to fight us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a game, right? It's a game we play. It's an interesting
rules.
Well, it's an interesting thing, human nature for a lot of us. It's you have, whether it's a car and you're trying to squeeze out whatever the rules are. If I have 350 cubic inches to work with, then I'm trying, what's my air, what's my fuel, what's my cam duration, all the things to maximize within the rules that are placed upon us.
Well, and not just that piece, but if you back up to like, what is the whole purpose of hunting? Now you're going to get into, some people are like, I want to go be mindful and become one with nature and enjoy the experience. And I think that's propaganda for game departments to sell more tags. Personally, I think they've got whole PR marketing campaigns to create these entities that push that on us. Because if you go back to the beginning, if you were a man and you were providing for your family or your group, you were in charge of hunting and killing. And being out in the field and having the experience starved people to death. So it's atavistic. Success in the field hunting is an atavistic requirement. And I get excited about the lily-petaled, soft-natured, going on a hike with a tag in your pocket is just as good as being successful and packing out the meat when you're done. Because I don't sign up to that. That's not me. I'm up there.
Bringing home the beef.
So if that really is ingrained into our DNA to be successful or starve, then every improvement that we make with our tools that help us be successful are just human nature.
Yes. Yeah. And so if I put myself in those shoes of, I live in this state, these are the boundaries that I have. It's no different than all of the work that's done in archery to extend and increase performance, right? They have the same things, but they continue to up the game. Well, here we are. I've got this to worry about, and I work all year with my food plots and my everything, managing the herd, my trail cans, and I might have one opportunity at that deer that I am hoping to harvest, kill. And if he steps out at 350 and I'm not prepared, that was my opportunity.
Wait until next year,
right?
Yeah.
But if I have the
let's hope you are capable enough, informed enough, and experienced enough shooter to know that you're not ready for that shot.
Yes.
You don't try it anyways.
Yes, I am not. Yeah, I think that's the balance, and I think that's something that we have to educate and train and all the things, because we promote 1,000 yards out of the box. We promote the effective.
Not for the Bushmaster though.
Not for the Bushmaster.
We're gonna go.
We're going
500.
We're gonna say 500 yards out of the box, which we feel confident with, because we've been able to see it and demonstrate like this is a thing.
Plus 15 years of very comparable performance.
Exactly.
And the benefit that we get from the straight wall versus muzzleloader, because a lot of these states the muzzleloader is also used.
It is exactly.
But now you can shoot again.
Yes.
You have a follow-up shot,
you
right?
Don't have to be.
And even more significantly is the powder situation. Now you can really count on that anticipated velocity, right? We don't have these huge temperature sensitivities to these powders that you do in the muzzleloader space. You don't have this sensitivity to how you load it. And so it becomes less of an expert weapon.
Yes.
To still achieve that kind of distance.
It's like, I compare muzzleloading to archery. It's you almost have to become a technician in that craft to be really good at it. It's the cleaning regimen. It's it's gluing veins on
The,
arrows.
the different the difference
Here,
between
you
muzzleloader
you
and
can
archery is you don't kill yourself if you screw up.
Yeah.
Like a lot of guys don't realize how expert you need to commit to become to do muzzleloader hunting.
Right.
Yeah,
You double load a muzzleloader,
you're in trouble.
it's a problem.
Might lose some body parts.
It's a problem. And so, so it takes away some of the
So it's safer, it's more consistent, and it's easier to shoot.
it is. And I think for folks that are regulated to this is a terrific opportunity to extend your range. And when we look at all of the tools between, our app, the Radical Scope, the Revic Radical Scope that we use this week, the ammunition component that we manufacture here, our ESs were amazing,
Incredible. Yeah.
and so Landon with the ammo team being able to spool up and create, this portion of the system, but providing a system.
Let's break down what that is, because technically, just throwing stuff out there to achieve certain downrange performance specifications, like that's achievable, it's doable,
Sure.
But it's not what makes it practical in application when you go to the field. So maybe we could just take a minute and break down, well, what is a long-range system? How is it that Gunwerks sets up a rifle so that a customer, without being some ballistic genius, can take it to the field and have success?
Yeah.
So maybe we could work through
Sure.
rifle,
Yes.
ammo, and then I can step in on the optics,
pack.
ballistics type
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. So for the Bushmaster, we will be offering it in our Magnus rifle system, which is our most versatile shooting platform. So the stock geometry is designed for shooting, and it actually manages the recoil very well. And we will offer it in 1 barrel length. So, it'll be a 20-inch carbon wrapped barrel. And so everything else, same as our 1,000-yard Magnus, right? Optics, scopes, we have multiple options. But as we get into, and I think what we touched on, the shooting system, is every single rifle goes through validation. We'll have that ammo and the data and that the mystery. Pull the mystery out. That gun will get shot with this ammo. It will be zeroed, and we will have a burn turret, a BDR that will give that starting place.
So the core features of the rifle are, it's built with the right stock, with the right weight and balance to manage the level of recoil that this cartridge produces.
Yes.
Which I was pleasantly surprised. I hate big guns, so it was actually really fun to shoot.
Yeah.
We could have burned up the rest of the ammo if we wanted to. So there's that aspect of it.
Yes.
And the other piece is the rifle is validated for precision, so that it is producing a group that passes our requirements internally before it gets shipped to the customer. And that sets you up with a platform that is ready to apply the ballistic science on top of and attain the accuracy that the customer is looking for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Precision along with the ES requirements and keeping our stream spreads within a tolerance, because just like
that gets over into Landon's requirements on ammo,
where we work very closely. We develop our rifles and our ammunition in tandem, essentially. So they're matched to work together. Right here, as with everything, we've got to watch those extreme spreads and SDs to make sure that we're maintaining a reliable number at distance, right, on that bullet drop. We talked exhaustively about bullet selection, right? Picking the right bullet, the right, a high BC that's going to perform at range, everything else. That bullet, because that's a little bit of a departure from your traditional 450 Bushmaster, that bullet is longer. So we do exceed your SAMI length, limit on that round. But what's nice is, because that's a long pointy bullet, that round will still chamber in any SAMI spec.
So safe in a SAMI chamber,
Yeah,
but depending on what magazine system you're running,
correct.
it's not going to
Too
work.
long, so it won't load in an AR mag if you're shooting a Bushmaster AR, but it'll fit perfectly fine in a short action AICS magazine, which is what we'll run it in.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I mean that's essentially it. You gotta.
Why don't you explain how the guns and the ammo? There's one recipe for ammo that works in all the guns.
You know, the way I explain this, and you may have a different way about it, but it's almost like we actually build our guns to match the ammunition more than we build the ammunition to match the gun. Because at the end of the day, you have to. Anybody out there could go buy a gun and find a load that will shoot well in that gun, right? You can change the load, whatever, play with all sorts of powders and seating depths and neck tensions, whatever else, right? You'll probably eventually arrive at something that shoots.
At least that's what every other gun manufacturer tells you.
Yeah, you'd hope so, right? Depending on the gun. But when we have to build a load, we have one single load that needs to shoot in every gun we build, right? And we're doing it kind of backwards, and it's a significant challenge as we've.
It's actually the biggest pain in the butt.
It is. It's literally been one of the most difficult things that we've had to overcome and achieve as a business. Takes a lot of time to get things there and keep them there. But that really is it. Is the two are matched up, and we shoot every rifle with that load that goes out the door, and it doesn't go out the door if it's not shoot.
If you back up into the development space, a lot of people don't understand how much work it takes to find that combination in the beginning.
Absolutely.
You know, if you're doing load workups, a lot of the times you're kind of leaning on work that somebody else has done. You know, somebody tells you about a new cartridge, you chamber one up, you kind of go to the well of the experiments. But if you start something from scratch, like clean sheet, it's like, and what do you do when there's no data for that? Nobody's doing it. You kind of have to do a little bit more work. Yeah. And I think if you go to like the 7 Rem Mag cartridge, like for the longest time, we loaded 168 grain bullets. And then we introduced the 7 LRM and we moved into the 180 grain bullet. And then shortly after that, Berger introduces this 195 grain bullet. And we had done such a great job over the previous decade of teaching people about how important ballistic coefficient is.
They latch right onto that 195.
Exactly. You go straight to this higher BC because higher BC equals more performance. But what you have to understand is that for every case and caliber combination, so case capacity versus caliber, there is a bullet weight. There's a bullet weight that's going to get you, that's going to extract the most performance out of that case. And in the situation in the 7 LRM, you go to 195s and you start looking at the data at 1,000 yards, it doesn't win. And we're not even talking about terminal performance. We're just specifically talking about the wind deflection and retained velocity. And so you switch back to that 180 and now you find this optimum. You get into that slightly smaller 7 Rem Mag case or 7 SOM, it's like, and you find in that one that 168 actually gives you the better performance. And so there's a trade-off between higher BC and velocity and caliber and case. And so to go at a project like this, it's not just, okay, go look up on the internet, find what somebody else is doing and go, right? Now that's what's going to happen after we put our product out is we have set the standard for what everybody should do. And that will be duplicated and emulated and followed. But at the outset, that initial selection is a fairly significant step. So it's just not like throwing it together.
Totally agree. There's two things that I think are totally different from what others are doing. And the first one is around the bullet, right? So if somebody doesn't understand and they look at the loads on the box and they see, well, this is slower, right? It's a couple hundred feet per second slower in initial velocity, you know, where everybody else is celebrating speed, right? That's something that we've, you know, we're all about high BC and outrunning, right? At what distance do we outrun, you know, and then the other one for us is straight wall case, right? Entirely different from what we're used to. And then the case capacity alone, powder selection. So these are a lot of things that are different. We're using entirely different powders. We're loading a straight wall case, which is the first of its kind for us.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely some learning that we had to, come across and invent.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
How about on the optics side, Aaron? I think that's the other piece that's easy to skim over, but it's probably the most important of all.
Actually, I'm fairly optic agnostic. We use a lot of different rifle scopes here. Obviously, Revic is a brand we have a lot of affinity for, but I have a lot of love for Leopold and for Collis. Those have been two really, really great companies to work with. And so we can outfit one of these with any one of those three brands. And the key function for a rifle scope is to help you hit the target. So, I mean, optics aside, I like first focal plane. That's a requirement that I have. I like the way that we design reticles in the Revic rifle scopes. So if first focal plane is a requirement for long range shooting, then I would say a reticle that can be utilized at the magnification ranges that shooters are going to use the optic needs to be optimized and usable without the need to turn on illumination. And so the biggest problem and the biggest complaint that most people have with first focal plane is they get so fine at low powers. All you have to do is go look at our Revic hunting style reticles. We've got an RH1 that we've done forever in the Leopold scope, and now we've got the RH2 that is available in the Revic rifle scopes. And you can see the distinct advantage of that post and how it appears at the low magnifications. So a lot of the guys will say, well, I can't use first focal plane because I hunt, in low light and this and that. Well, baloney. Like, that scope will produce the result that you need, and then you always have that illuminated center cross that looks like a dot when you need it. So first thing, you got to have an optic that is, I would say it has to have a zero stop, and it has to have a first focal plane reticle to be a long range unit. It doesn't have to be non-raising turret, so raising or non-raising turret, that's fine, just needs to have a stop. And then we like to produce ballistic turrets for our units. So we've done ballistic turrets for Leopold, for Collis, for everybody forever. For the Revic, we call that a ballistic data ring because it's just a little simple ring that costs $25 if you want to update your ballistics and do a different one. Super easy to swap out. So, and that concept's been around forever. We really popularized that when we introduced the Huskama line when we started Gunwerks in 2006. So it's like we've been doing ballistic turrets since the very beginning of Gunwerks. It's part of this systems concept. And a lot of people poo-poo on those, and they have forever, because they think that it's not flexible enough or it doesn't represent the conditions that you're hunting in. And usually those, in my opinion, so this is we're in opinion space, but my opinion, usually that judgment comes from people who don't have significant hunting experience. Because when you hunt a lot, you realize the value of not having to go to a calculation device and calculate a minute of angle solution. You realize the value of being able to communicate very simply in the language of the hunter, which is how many yards is it? So I think a ballistic turret is another requirement. So we've set up 3 requirements for a hunting optic. So when it comes to this Bushmaster system, like if we're kitting out this system, pick one of those great optics, put a calibrated ballistic turret on it that matches the ballistics of this cartridge, which it's like this big old rainbow. What are we, 23 minutes
to 500?
To 500?
Yeah. 23 minutes
at 5,000 feet. So it's a big turn. Like a lot of scopes run out at 20, that Acura 5 to 25 is 25 minutes. And then our radicals are 30. So depends on which scope, but you're going to get about 500 in a turn, or maybe just a little bit more than 500.
Full revolution, right?
So the secret sauce isn't just building a ballistic turret, because that's great. And some other companies do it and it works fine. But the most important thing is the thing that a lot of guys bitch about, which is you have to correct for conditions. You get an air density change, you get a temperature change, pressure change. So there's your key air density. You can throw humidity in there if you want. And then if you've got Eötvös effect, which is going to come into play with these kind of flight times, you're a second of flight time to 500. So Eötvös effect, that's east-west, north-south variation. Those things need to be addressed. If you've got big wind, and now you've got aerodynamic jump you need to correct for, headwind, tailwind. And so having a smart calculator. So you could use your app and you could put all these parameters and calculate that solution. Now, while you're doing that, there goes the animal. So a lot of my feels for the optimum hunting situation is that you might have one opportunity that might last 5 seconds. Is your system ready for that? And so the smart ballistics, since 2010, we introduced the first rangefinder with a full ballistic solver on it. The smart ballistics is in your rangefinder. So you push that button, you grab the range, and it gives you a shoot-to range that already corrects your turret for the current conditions that you're at. So very, very significant elevation of the concept of the ballistic turret. And now a hunter can speak in terms of yards and have the speed and the use of that without worrying about it being a close enough solution. It's an exact solution, as exact and perfect as any solution you can get, and it happens so fast that it allows you to take advantage of every hunting opportunity. So there's the system.
Well, and
great optic,
yeah,
ballistic turret, and a Revix smart rangefinder that's measuring pressure in real time, measuring temperature, measuring compass heading, measuring incline, and it's giving you a shoot-to range, a smart range, based on all those parameters.
It absolutely changes the game. First focal plane. I know that a lot of folks in this area are, maybe not understanding completely why first focal plane for long distance shooting. I think the ballistic understanding is great versus I sight in this 3.2 inches high at 100 gets me here, and then that's still in the vitals. All that, take that away, and then first focal plane. This is all about wind calls.
It's all about wind calls. Yeah. And when they're even that much more important here, you have to have it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first focal plane gives you the same holdover value no matter what magnification you're on. That's the difference, right? So now, and we click.
Why is that important? Because otherwise, a second focal plane, just turn it all the way up. Why not just turn the magnification all the way up?
Well, you think about the low light conditions you're going to be hunting. And not to mention, a lot of this is what tree stand hunting. You're probably starting out at backed out off at
could be
minimum magnification, right? In case that close encounter happens. To me, those are all recipes for disaster if you're shooting a second focal.
Yeah, field of view, right? Yeah. So relates to magnification. So most of the time you're pulling back just a little bit so you have a big field of view so you can see what's going on. Hopefully, as a shooter, you're controlling your gun and you can see the bullet impact so that you can react fast enough. So I think that field of view is a big thing. And what I've seen time and time again, somebody pulls the magnification down, holds wind on a second focal plane, and they hold way more wind than they should, and they miss.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so it's a white-tailed deer across a cornfield, and it was a 135-inch buck, big deal. But what if it's that once-in-a-lifetime 200-inch deer? What if it's that situation where that miss hurts and it hurts forever? Like, we got all these customers that spend all this money shooting big stuff all over the world, and you go spend $100,000 on a sheep hunt, and you choke the chicken because you held twice as much wind as you meant to. Sheep runs over the hill, and it was the last day of the hunt, and you go home empty-handed. So I've seen it over and over again. I've seen it in training. I've seen it in customer anecdotal stories. I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's why we do not do second focal plane scopes on long-range guns at Gunwerks.
And we don't, right. We click for elevation and we hold for wind.
And the truth is, if you just design the reticle right, there's no trade-off. You look at a 25 power scope. Like, what are the ranges that you're going to use that scope? Like, magnification range. So you're out hunting. Mm-hmm. What are the ranges you're actually going to use that scope?
99% of the time, it's going to be 6 to 12 power.
You?
6 to 18, maybe.
You're up in the mountains hunting your high country mule deer.
Yeah.
You're going to shoot a mule deer at 800 yards at 6 power.
Not 800 yards.
Okay,
No,
so
but at 200, right? So I would say you got your bell curve, right? And the vast majority of your shots are going to be what?
I've killed
400 to
800
600.
animals. I've never shot an animal in the intermediate range. Never. Like
Never?
I'm a
Yeah.
0%.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're at the bottom or top?
Yeah, you're going to run and you go look at the way people use it. They always go to the top and they back off a little bit,
Yeah.
right? You're going to run 15 power,
Yeah.
25 power.
Okay.
Now, there's cases where you're going to run all the way as low as you can
Sure.
because you're walking up on something
Yeah.
or you're pushing through some space and you're going to have to shoot close.
Yeah.
So you're the first person I've ever talked to that says, I actually play in the no man's zone.
Yeah. No, I think for any of the long distance stuff, I'm pretty close to max. But yeah, I don't leave it there. Usually I'll start lower.
You talk about the reticle design. The one thing that always comes back to my mind is that bison I killed. I think was it 3 years ago here in Wyoming. Now, I walked up on that buffalo at 25 yards in sagebrush. Didn't know it was there until it stood up, and I'm standing there looking at a 2,000-pound bison.
Yeah.
And it was one of the very first Acuras that we had, like very first samples that we had with the new reticle, right? And I'm in bear country, so I'm carrying that rifle all the way back down. And I pulled up and shot, and it wasn't until days later that I kind of thought about it and realized that's a 25 power scope backed all the way out. You cannot see that reticle at that range.
You can't
You
see
can't see
the
this is
center
what I'm
part of the
getting.
reticle.
You can't see the fine center part of the reticle. But that German post, it was so intuitive. It never even dawned on me that I didn't actually have like
A dot
in the middle, because you got brackets coming in from the side and a post coming up the side,
Yeah.
and it is absolutely point and shoot intuitive.
Yeah.
You never even think about it. So I mean that reticle is designed right for that.
And so you're
scenario.
playing it all the way to the bottom.
all the way to the bottom.
Yeah. So I know that is a valid application, and it's the one that everybody struggles with first focal plane.
Right.
Because here's how a lot of people do the first focal plane. They have a Christmas tree reticle, or they have a tactical reticle, whatever. It's in first focal plane. Nobody's doing hunting reticles in first focal plane. So they've got this reticle, and then they expect you to turn the illumination on.
Yeah.
So you go kick the illumination on, and all of a sudden the whole thing lights up, and you have the Christmas tree, you got the windage holds, you got the vertical, you have all this stuff that comes up, and now you can't see what you're shooting at.
Yeah.
If you look at the RH2 reticle, it's just the center cross.
Yeah.
And when you're pulled all the way to low power, it just gives you
Nice
the
little dot.
appearance of a dot.
Yeah.
And so if your intensity's set low enough, it's like it doesn't overshadow the target you're shooting at. It doesn't any of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still am challenging Landon to this 6 to 12 bullshit. I call bullshit.
I love it. I guess I love it.
Those are the throwaway powers.
Yeah.
Like when I designed that first focal plane, I said nobody uses this power range. So
Well, I guess I've never really paid really close attention to it. I know. Yeah.
I remember John Burns was a big proponent of the 15 to 18 power range for that 1,000-yard type shooting because of the field of view that you would get.
Yeah.
And you just didn't need more than that to have reticle resolution, to be able to have target resolution, pick your aim points.
Yeah. It's so fun. I love that we're going down the optics rabbit hole and the science behind the why.
You invited me here.
I love. Oh no, this is exactly what we need. The passion, though, is this is what we bring to this community of hunters is experience set and equipment that will allow you to be effective at a distance that you didn't know was possible. Right. Go into the range. Let's talk about the range. We built this gun. We built a couple, and so we Monday, was it Monday? We got all this weather came in. We had some snow and not the spring that others probably are experiencing. So we decided to go to the range, and after work, go into the range. It's 40 some degrees. It's plenty breezy, right? We set our expectations, and our goal was 500 yards. What did we do?
Well, we went to the Cody shooting range.
We did. We were
and what we discovered was there must not be anybody in charge there because the steel situation was garbage. So just throwing that out there.
It was really
like we've got a subscription to go here, and they're providing nothing except for target butts to staple paper up to. It's like, let's hang some steel.
Yes.
Next time we'll take it down to
Of course,
where we've got 500 pieces of steel up that we maintain. Okay,
so it would have been a lot better.
rant over.
Yeah. So first target we pick, we're out there scanning. We're like
The only target that we could pick out to a reasonable distance,
an octagon shaped steel
10-inch
Must
at
have
10
been
inch.
10-inch octagon at 550. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It 10 inches. However, it was a little canted, so
yeah, it was about 45 degrees.
either way, it was plenty challenging to start with. At a distance of 550 yards, here's our goal, like right out of the box. We're going for it.
So you shot in the tunnel, zeroed. So you were happy with
I had
the
good
gun
data.
for your zero.
I had a good zero and good data.
Okay, so we hadn't validated trajectory yet,
Correct.
right? But we had a great velocity and a great zero to start with.
Yes.
All right.
Yep. So
Expected to need to true the BC a little bit. Yeah, which
yep.
yeah.
And so we here we are, and let's go, right? And first couple shots were, they were all very close, right? And there weren't any like, where was that? They were all scaring it, and it was mostly wind, right? I think our elevation was really good.
We were just skirting the bottom of the steel, so we were shooting half minute,
Yeah.
3/4 minute low.
Which
We haven't
our
reviewed-
experience with that bullet was
Yeah.
Yep.
Advertised
what we
versus
expected
actual.
to have to do is to true it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm sure the video will show. I'm sure Nate will pull the video in that we'll get to see it. I have not yet seen the video. So a couple shots and then impact, right? And then, of course, being the competitive people that you guys are, they said, you got to do it again. So impact. When the second impact just blew the steel off the post.
Yeah, so we're done. Out to 800 yards. That was all.
I guess
that was all the steel that was available. So I would have preferred to true that at 400 yards.
Yeah.
Because depending on what that BC is,
Yeah.
depending on what it actually is in those conditions, we were potentially going subsonic at 550. So if that BC trues out at 350 to 370, we're just kind of skirting right on the edge of subsonic. And that's what I've noticed with that bullet is it starts coming apart in your predictive ability, because we were just using a G1 BC and a G1 drag model. And technically it would have been to our benefit to true this out as a G8, because that's a standard drag model that is a lot closer to a conical type bullet, flat base with like a 10 secant ogive, which starts to look like a conical bullet. Whereas a G1 is like a 2 caliber tangent ogive on a flat base, which is just a real big fatty.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as we develop this, I do think there's a lot of value in setting up the Doppler and building a Doppler profile for it.
Yes.
And then probably also trying to equate to a G8, because I think a lot of the other solvers have G8 solving capability. So I would say there's a couple things that we could do to improve the ballistics. So if we could have trued at 400, I would have sat on it and said, okay, this is the number, let's just leave it alone. But because where we are at, I think it's still squishy.
Yeah. In terms of
what the actual BC of that bullet's going to run.
Yeah. So more work to.
So by the time it lands in your hand, it's going to be in the Revit app and ready to go. Right? Yeah. We're going to have that Doppler profile and everything. So
Yeah.
plug it.
And we're holding for 3 minutes, I think. We started at 500. 3 or 4 minutes.
It's almost a minute per mile per hour wind, wasn't it? Yeah. Significant.
Yeah.
It's actually just a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Like it's fairly hefty.
Yeah.
The advertised BC in a G1 at 500 yards was 7 minutes.
Yeah.
For a 5 mile an hour wind.
Right. Yeah.
So you got to be able to you got to be able to measure or estimate wind very well.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we decided to stretch our legs. What was the next target?
Well, the steel that was available was like in the 700. We had a
820 and 920, I think, wasn't it?
I thought we tried one at 7.
We had the big patch at 7, and then the sheep over there in the 8s, and then we had the other one at 9.
920.
So Jim, since he's a little older, we let him shoot the closer one.
Oh,
700.
okay. Here we go.
Then I shot the sheep at 800 and change, and Landon shoots a lot more than the rest of us, so we let him shoot the long one.
I was lobbing some out there 900 plus. But.
Yeah, and we all shot steel at those distances.
It worked.
That's the thing, right?
You know, I mean, it was even way out there with a little bit of wind. It was waterlined, you know, which basically is telling me you're getting a little bit of wind variability left and right. But like your elevation was.
I felt like at those distances we were sub 3/4 minute of spread. I mean, we only had 20 rounds of data out there, but I felt like it was sub 3/4 minute.
I would agree there.
Yeah. But
way exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, I'll tell you,
it was
it hit hard out there.
Yeah. Up some dust. That sheep, I mean, you knew when you hit it.
Oh, it rang.
Yeah. No, that was fun.
But flight time, we were looking at flight time. It was several Mississippis.
Yeah. About a half a second longer than you thought it should take. But we did the same thing with the muzzle loaders when we first got them going. And I remember Mike would put up a paper plate in that 9 to 1,000 yard range, and he could put shot after shot after shot on there. That was crazy.
So impressive. The takeaway for me, I mean, that was affirmational, right? Okay. 500 yards is completely doable.
Have you got to shoot with the radical that much?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So we had a radical on there.
Yes.
Just for the guys that don't know what that is, that's our version of a smart scope, where it's got an encoder in the elevation turret. It's got a full ballistic solver built in, and it's got a weather station built in. So it's measuring all the conditions.
Absolutely.
And based on what you dial, it's telling you the distance that bullet's going to hit. So you take a range, you just dial to that distance,
and there's a number
on.
I mean,
shoot. And so we were actually putting in the wind vector. So when you're in the display, you just put the wind vector. So we were shooting like a 2 o'clock at 4 mile an hour, and then that'll build in your headwind, tailwind, your aerodynamic jump, your YOVTOS, and your wind, your spin drift, everything. And so it gives you a wind hold. So hold right so many minutes. So the radical with I like with 22s, with the muzzle loaders, so with this,
huge.
They're so much fun because they can build in that advanced ballistic solution so quickly and easily using vector winds and put it right there in the display. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that pairing a radical with this, the BR10 or app, preparing somebody to use this gun and be effective with these tools makes it so much easier. But so we had a good time. I think that recoil's manageable. It's got a little sharp hit to it, but very manageable.
No worse. I'd say like a unbraked 308 or something like that.
Right.
Like not bad.
The gun was, for as light as the gun was, I thought it was very good. I thought it was nicer than a muzzleloader. And I thought it was way nicer than the old 375. And the truth is, you do one of these super light guns in a 28 Nosler, I won't shoot it. So it was way less recoil than
it was enjoyable. And so we were running a directional brake, similar to what we run on our muzzleloaders, and actually it's the same, right? It's the same as a muzzleloader brake wise. So really excited, looking forward to helping others be successful, learning shooting systems. Same principles apply that we've been doing for 1,000 yards at 500. Here we go. Any final comments? How do you feel?
It's a repeater version of a long range muzzleloader.
That's right. I got more to put it. That's right. I got.
Where can we get one?
When can we get one?
When?
That's right. By the time this is published, we'll be pushing them out there. We're already on the books for production to start making them. The first run should be ready by 1st of June. and sending out to customers, I'm guessing very quickly.
Soon launch with a few on the shelf, and then some make to order if you're a little bit slower to.
Yes, so we will have components to build to satisfy customer orders for this fall, and the first batch will be launch edition version. So we've got some special treatments coming with this first batch that I'm pretty excited about, and hoping that others will get to giggle like we did at the range.
Yeah. Well, you guys did a great job putting together a cool package.
Yeah.
The gun ammo combo is going to work, and it's going to satisfy that need that we have to be successful. It's going to give you a tool that is an extreme edge, and I think you guys have a real winner with this. So good job.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody.
If you like what you're hearing here, please take a second and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate your feedback and suggestions for topics you'd like discussed or questions you want answered on the podcast. You can reach out on Facebook or Instagram or send us an email to podcast@gunwerks.com. Also, be sure and check out our full offering of long-range gear at gunwerks.com. Use promo code LRP for free shipping on any order.